theyeshiva.net.
Masada Pesachim, Daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line from the wide lines. Yeah, can I trouble somebody to bring the Chumashim, please? Right here. Please turn to page 314, Parshas Shmini. 314, the Blue Chumash, page 314, Parshas Shmini, Leviticus chapter 11. Leviticus chapter 11. I just want, before we begin the Gemara inside, I want to just review the Psukim. We looked at these Psukim, but we want to today add another pasuk that's going to be introduced into the equation. Leviticus chapter 11 deals with the laws of kashrus. The laws of kashrus in terms of which animals you're allowed to eat, domesticated, undomesticated animals, what fish you're allowed to eat, and what birds you're allowed to eat. That's the first part of Leviticus 11. The second part of Leviticus 11 is the laws of purity and impurity. So the first part is very applicable today. It's the kosher animals. You know, split hooves, chewing the cud, regurgitating the food, mafreses parsa, milas geira. We speak about fins and scales. We speak about all the birds that are kosher. But then he moves on to the laws of purity and impurity. And as we remember, there are 8 types of rodents, or shratzim, that when they die become a source of impurity. We call them an av hatuma, and if somebody touches them, he or she must go to the mikveh. And at night, they become fully pure. And if they touch a keli, a utensil, the keli must be put in the mikveh. And if they touch food or they touch drinks, well, they can't be put into a mikveh. They are just tameh. Food and drinks become tameh. And the Torah discusses what happens when this sheretz, when this dead sheretz falls into a keli, the keli becomes tameh. Not only falls in, if it comes in contact with a keli, the keli becomes tameh. But there's a unique keli called a klei cheres. And a klei cheres is an earthenware vessel, a vessel that's made out of mud, earth, and water together with straw, and it's baked in an oven or in a furnace. That's called klei cheres, which we call clay vessels, vessels made out of clay or earthenware pottery. And when the sheretz falls into the ear space, even if it doesn't touch it, the keli becomes tameh. That's the uniqueness of klei cheres, that even if it doesn't touch the keli, on the contrary, actually, this is fascinating. It has to be dead. If it touches the klei cheres from the outside, from this surface, it does not become tameh. If it goes into the ear space, even if it doesn't touch the surface, it becomes tameh. If it's suspended, let's say a spider web, or whatever, however way, it gets suspended in the ear space, it's metame the klei cheres. And now the klei cheres becomes what we call in halacha a rishon, because it came in contact with a sheretz, which is an av, and all the food and drinks that are in the klei cheres now become tameh because they are in contact with the klei cheres. So even if the sheretz was taken out, but now the keli became a rishon, and the food and the drinks in the keli become a sheni l'tumah. Right? No, now even if you touch the outside, you become tameh because the keli has become tameh. That's the fascinating thing. Even if the food will touch the outer wall, the whole klei cheres became tameh by contact with the sheretz in its ear space. In other words, the klei cheres entirely becomes tameh. How? Because the sheretz was inside it, even if it didn't touch its inner walls. And then the whole keli becomes tameh. So food or drinks that is in the keli or touches the keli now becomes tameh. What's its status? Its status we call a sheni l'tumah, because it touched the keli, which touched the sheretz. The sheretz is an av, the keli is a rishon. That's what Parshas Shmini teaches us, Leviticus chapter 11. Let's just see a few psukim inside here. Let's look from Pasuk Lamed Gimel, okay? Page 314, Pasuk Lamed Gimel. V'chol kli cheres asher yipol mehem el toicha. Any earthenware pottery that a sheretz falls in inside, toicha, right? Toicha means into its cavity. Anything in this vessel becomes tameh, and the keli itself has to be broken. Meaning a klei cheres you can't put into the mikveh; it has to be disjointed, and if you want, you could put it back together, because it's earth. So you can just separate it and crumble it up, and then you could bring it back together, because you can't put it in a mikveh. Fine. When we said everything inside becomes tameh, is it everything? No. Pasuk Lamed Daled. Mikala oichel asher ya'achel asher yavi alav mayim yitma. From any food that's eaten, that water came on that food, that food will become tameh. These are very important words. From here we learn that food can become tameh if it touches a keli. We also learn that the food has to be wet. The food has to have water that came on it. Even if now it's dry, but at some point water made it wet. And because water made it wet, it's now susceptible to tumah. And any liquid that is drank, that could be drunk in any vessel, yitma, should also become tameh. So the way I understand this is, any food that could be eaten that became wet, and any liquid that you could drink in any keli, all of these foods and all of these drinks, if they come in contact with the clay cheres, with the earthenware pottery, right? They're inside the earthenware pot, or they touch it, what happens? They all become tameh. The oichel and the mashke becomes tameh. And if the nevela, the corpse of the sheretz, falls on them, it becomes tameh. Tanur v'chirayim yutats. If it's an oven or a stove that are made of cheres, earthenware, yutats, they have to be disjointed, they have to be smashed. Why? Because they're tameh. Tmeim heim, they are tameh. Utmeim yiyu lachem, and they should be tameh to you. Now, right away, when you read this verse, you right away know there's something here. Tmeim heim, they're tameh. Utmeim yiyu lachem, and they should be tameh to you. Like you just said, they're tameh. They should be tameh to me and not to my friend, right? So right away, the Chazal pick up on this, and the Torah Kohanim says, Rashi quotes it, don't think there's a mitzvah to break them. If you want, you could keep them as tameh. In other words, the Torah doesn't mind if you have a tameh oven. Just know that it's tameh. Very important. Tmeim yiyu lachem. They may remain tameh. Don't think I'm telling you to break it. I'm telling you to break it if you want to cleanse it. But if not, as long as you know that it's tameh, it's good. Very powerful idea in life. In other words, there's two ways of dealing with tumah in your life. One is getting rid of it, and one is just knowing that it's tameh.
It's not a problem.
Right, and it's not a problem anymore. Because you know what it is. In other words, not always can I get rid of all toxicity and impurity. There is a second option. Sometimes you just have to know what it is. Respect it for what it is. Quarantine it. Just know what it is. As long as you know what it is, this is a place of tumah, you'll know what not to bring here. You know, this should not be the defining force in your life. You don't have to. It's a very important idea in life, in spiritual life and in physical life. I'm just showing you how these three words are not just tmeim yiyu lachem. Thank you. They're tameh to you. In other words, I don't care if they remain by you as tameh. As long, of course, as you're not going to put truma in it, and you're not going to put karbonis in it, and you're not going to put food in it and then mix that food with truma or karbonis. As long as you know what's going on, as long as you're not a kohen who eats the food from this oven and then goes and eats truma, whatever, all these types of things, as long as you're aware of the tumah, I'm good, we're good. Yeah, that's true. Food that's in a house where somebody died, all that food is tameh. All that food is tameh. Unless if the food was in a clay cheres and the clay cheres was tied up on the top, so then it doesn't become tameh because the tumah of a clay cheres is only in the airspace and it was sealed, right? But if it's not, if it's on the open, all the food will become tameh, right? And the oven will become tameh. I'm just giving an example. For example, in the Tanya, he speaks about the difference of a tzaddik and a beidin, right? That a tzaddik is somebody who cleanses his soul from all, call it toxicity, promiscuity, negativity. But then there's another Jew who cannot do that. He remains or she remains with thoughts and experiences and emotions that are often tameh, they're often impure. But he says that's not a problem. And sometimes God wants that exactly, as long as you put it in context, you know what it is, and therefore how to deal with it. So it's a very powerful lesson. Pasuk Lamed Vav. It's not a mitzvah. Maybe you may not have that mitzvah, yeah. Pasuk Lamed Vav. Ach mayan ubor mikveh mayim yiyeh. Ach, what's ach? Ach is however. A mayan, a wellspring. A boir is a cistern, a pit, which has a gathering of water. Yiyeh tahor. It should be pure. Very interesting pasuk. This verse is a huge, very important verse in Torah. A wellspring and a cistern, a boir, a pit, which is mikveh mayim. Mikveh means a gathering of water. Yiyeh tahor should remain pure. Here we learn that water in a wellspring, or water that's in a cistern, in a pit, in a cave, in a boir, that water is tahor. is tar. But v'neigeya benivlasam yitma. But if you touch the nevela of the corpse of the shrotzim, you become tameh. V'chiyipel menivlasam al kol zereh zeirua sheyizareya tayiru. V'neigeya, but if somebody touches benivlasam, the corpse of the 8 shrotzim, you become tameh. No, the water is tahor, right? So Rashi explains, even if I'm in the water, I'm in the mikveh, but I touch the sheretz, I become tameh, right? Don't think if I'm in a mikveh, I can have a sheretz in my hand and say, oh, I'm tahor. The sheretz doesn't become tahor by putting it in the mikveh. You become tahor. If you're holding on to it, it's called toivel v'sheretz biyadeh, right? V'chiyipel b'nivlasam al kol zera zeirua asher yizareya tahirhu. If the nevela of the corpse of a sheretz falls on a legume, on a seed, it remains pure. Why? Because it never became wet. But once the seed, the food becomes wet, and then the sheretz falls on the food, it becomes tamei. Didn't we learn that already before? That if the water was placed on it, right, earlier in Pasuk Lamed Daled, why does he have to repeat it? Very good question. Very good question. Now talking about seed, right? Before he spoke about food, now he spoke about seed. If the water is on the seed, it also teaches you a big thing. Is there such a thing as a seed that doesn't have water on it? How did it grow? Could you grow without water? You can't grow without water. So from here we learn a big yesod, and that is, what counts is if you got wet after you were detached, after you were harvested. The raining that happens while you're attached to the earth doesn't count. It has to become wet after it was detached. Huh? Right. Yeah. Huh? Asher Yachal, we learned that it has to be that the tumah is a kibetza. It only transfers tumah if it's oichel asher ye'achel. If it's not a kibetza, it will not transfer tumah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. If it's dry, yeah. You have a grape. You poured water on it. Now it's completely dry. You put it in a towel, but it's makabel tumah. It's susceptible to tumah because it wasn't once wet. It's the contact with the liquid, with the mashka, that turns it into something that's susceptible to tumah. Susceptible to tumah. That mashka is irrelevant. Because everything that was attached to the ground got wet. It wouldn't grow if there was no water. Yeah. So the mayim has to be on the zera after it became detached from the ground, from the earth. And then the zera becomes susceptible to tumah. And it's not just zera, it's any food in the world, any food. A fruit, a vegetable, or any food, really any food. It has to become mukhshel kabel tumah. Well, there are 7 types of beverages, right? 7 types. Yad, shachat, dam. Yad, shachat, dam. Yayin is wine. Dalid is dvash, right? Bee honey, so that's yad. Then you have shin, which is shemen, oil. You have ches, which is chalav, milk. You have tes, which is tal, dew. And then you have dam, dalid is blood. And mayim is, of course, water. Mayim, water. That's not. The food has to become wet with water or one of the other 6 beverages, like blood or oil or milk or dew, etc., the other ones. Yeah, and of course, bee honey and wine. Those are the 7 mashke. Why those? So, as we will see, for all of them, we have a source in Torah that they're compared to water. They're called a mashke like water, all of them. All of these other 6 beverages, in the Tanakh, we have a source that they are considered a mashke, a beverage, a liquid. The Torah calls it a beverage, which is a fascinating idea. Apple juice, we call a beverage. But we can't say it has the halachic status of a beverage if Torah doesn't call it a beverage. Nowhere does it say in Torah, drink apple juice on Shabbos, right? Or apple juice goes great with a birthday cake. Humans invented the concept of apple juice. In terms of, as far as God is concerned, you can eat an apple. You want to make apple juice, that's wonderful. But to give it a status of a real liquid, of a real mashke, that makes oichel, mukhshel, kabel tumah, we cannot do that because this is a... Wine. Wine is considered a mashke. Wine is considered a mashke in the Torah, yeah.
Even if it's
So the fact you could take anything and grind it into a liquid, right? That doesn't turn it into the halachic status of a liquid, even though in practicality it flows like a liquid. To have the halachic status of liquid, it has to have, the Torah calls it a concept of a liquid. Apple is not liquid. You turn the apple into a liquid, that's your problem. Enjoy it.
It's mostly water, so a lot of times.
Water or the other 6 beverages.
I'm saying it's mixed with a lot of make it.
100% concentrate apple.
100%.
Talking real apple juice.
Apple cider.
Huh? The hechsher, yeah, you have to want it should get wet. If you make my food wet and I didn't want, it's not makabel tumah. The Rambam goes so far that he holds that liquids that are not one of the 7 liquids can't even become tameh. He holds that a liquid that wasn't one of the 7 liquids can't even become tameh. Not only can't it make others be makabel tumah, it can't even become tameh. The Rabbi disagrees. He holds that all liquids become tameh because they're not worse than foods. Huh? No, he holds that mashkin even can't, the Kabbalah's tumah of mashkin, as mashke is only if it's one of the shiva mashkin. You have to know what? Whatever the source of tumah is, for example, a sheretz is metame even if it's the size of a lentil, right? But an avela, let's say horse meat, a horse that dies, right? It's also a source of tumah, but only a kazaya. So you always have to know what the ava tumah is to be able to know what the shear is. Let's say you have a mace, a corpse, right? A little piece of a mace is basar. It's not metame. You have to have a kazaya's basar in a mace. It doesn't transfer tumah. You can't eat. You don't eat it, but it's not. It just doesn't transfer tumah. You're not allowed to eat a little bit of a dead corpse of a nevela. You're not allowed to. Of course, you're not allowed to eat it. But it's called chatzi shir. Even eating it, right? There's machlokes in Gemarah of chatzi shir asem and atayra mutam and atayra. Let's say I eat a pig the size of a bean. There's no prohibition for that in Torah because it just says you're not allowed to eat. Eating is a kazayas. So what if I eat a little tiny bean? So there's a machlokes of Berich and Reish Lakish if biblically chatzi shir asur or not. Is it asur but there's no penalty, or it's not even asur? So machlokes. We pass in chatzi shir asem and atayra, meaning you're not allowed to even eat a little piece. No penalty at all. Of course not. It's not called achila. No. Why chatzi shir asem and atayra? Well, that depends how you look at a shear. If a shear is a cumulative or a shear is a new entity. It's a question in physics. If chatzi shear is part of the isur, or chatzi shear is not part of the isur. In other words, when Torah says you're not allowed to eat a kazayas of bacon, right? Is it a cumulative, meaning a half a kazayas is a half isur, or no? A kazayas is a new entity. A half a kazayas, you don't have anything. Is it a shia mitztarif? Is it a cumulative? Is it made out of many particles? If it's not a cumulative, so then it would be fine. It would be fine. As long as you eat it not b'chdei achilas pras, it would be fine. Binat Torah. Binat Torah would be fine. Okay. Yes. Yeah, because the majority. Yeah, the majority. Huh?
A human being is like 90% water.
70% water, right? Yeah.
Everything is like.
The earth is also the same about 7.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not 40 trillion. The flower.
How much? 100 trillion? 50 trillion.
Calculate.
I think some are saying 100 trillion already. Okay. 50 trillion. We'll update the number. Next class, I'll update the number. It's not 40 trillion cells, it's 50 trillion cells. You thought the body was impressive. Now we know it's impressive. 50 trillion. Let's face it, 10 trillion is not a small number. No small number. Now here was the big question, how we look at liquid from a Torah perspective. So as you recall, the Gemarah brought a brayso with 3 opinions. Reb Meir said, right, and Reb Elazar agreed with him, that Tumas Mashkin itself is min HaTorah, but transferring to others is only midirabbanon. Mashkin could become Tameh, but it can't transfer Tumah. It can become Tameh because the Pasuk says, V'chol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli yitma. That's not a question. It can become Tameh, but it can't transfer Tumah. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, it could transfer, and not only to food and drinks. but even to vessels. Because he says, don't read yitma, read it yitamei. V'chol mashke yishasa b'chol kli yitamei. It's pronounced yitma, but when it's read, it can be read as yitame. And it says, b'chol kli yitame, which means not only a liquid that's drunk in every vessel becomes tame, but a liquid that's drunk in any vessel, it's metame that vessel. And Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon hold, liquid is tame biblically. It can transfer tuma biblically, but only to foods and drinks. Like this, because it says that the food and drinks that fall into this keli will become tame. But it will not transfer tumah to kalim or people. Kalim or people will not become tumah from oichlin and mashkin. And also, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, everyone holds that. That's what we learned many times, that a keli can only be metame oichl and mashke, right? A keli can't be metame another keli, because a keli can only be a rishon, it can't be a sheni. That's why the pasuk says here, only food and drinks will become tame from a keli. But once this liquid is tame, can it transfer to kalim? Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, but he's an isolated opinion. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon says, no, only to other foods. It can transfer tumah to other foods, but it cannot transfer tumah to kalim. Because they say yitma could be read yitame, that all the mashke that's drunk in a keli can pass on tumah to other food.
Rabbi Yehuda says kalim and
Yeah, kalim and for sure food. That's a unique opinion. Rabbi Yehuda is the only one who holds that a keli can be a sheni biblically. Unique opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. On this, the Gemara posed a great challenge, and the challenge was, we have a famous brisa where Rabbi Elazar taught us that ein lamashke, his language was, Rabbi Elazar taught us that ein tuma lamashkin kol ikar, that biblically liquids don't become tamei at all. That's what Rabbi Elazar taught us. And even a rishon, biblically they don't become tamei at all. And Rabbi Elazar quoted, his source was a testimony by Yosef ben Yoezer from the city of Tzreida, who taught us that the liquids in the Beis HaMitbachayim, the beverages in the butchering home, the butchering section of the Beis HaMikdash, it was called the butchering section, because that's where they would prepare the meat of the karbonas, they would skin them and clean them and rinse them. This was on the northern side of the altar. Yosef ben Yezer, who lived during Bayesheni, he lived early in Bayesheni, he's in the beginning of the tradition of the Messiah of Pirkei Avos, Yosef ben Yezer Ish Tzreida, right? Much before even Hillel and Shammai and Shmaya and Avtalia and Shimon ben Shatach. He is mamish in the earlier generations of Bayesheni, and he says testimony that the liquids in the butchering section of the Beis HaMikdash were pure, were dachan, were pure. And that, of course, means that he would hold that biblically liquids cannot get tamei, because if biblically liquids can get tamei, then the rabbis would not be able to turn these liquids into something that remain pure. How can they cancel out a statement and a mitzvah in the Torah that all liquid can become tamei? And they say that one in the Beis HaMikdash, the mitzvah is off. Obviously, Yosef ben Yezer held that the entire institution of tumah in beverages is rabbinic, and therefore they can be selective and say, Beis HaMikdash not, outside of the Beis HaMikdash yes, and this is what Rabbi Elazar was teaching us. So the Gemara says, Meile loit Shmuel, it would work, because Shmuel held, what did Yosef ben Yezer mean? Of course, liquid can become tamei biblically, because it can't transfer biblically. That's what they said in the Beis HaMikdash. We will allow liquids to remain pure in the sense of transferring, not they themselves are pure. They don't transfer tumah, because Yosef ben Yezer held that biblically liquids don't transfer, they only remain tamei themselves. Rabbinically they transfer, and the rabbis can be selective with their own edicts, and hence they could say in the Beis HaMikdash they don't transfer. But Rav, who explained Yosef ben Yezer to mean that liquids themselves don't become tamei. In other words, the entire institution of liquid tumah vis-a-vis itself is rabbinic, and that's why in the Beis HaMikdash they can cancel it, and they could say it's tar. That's what Rav teaches, and that's what Rabbi Elazar meant. This is a contradiction between the two brises of Rabbi Elazar. First one, he agrees with Reb Meir that it becomes tamei, minat Torah just doesn't transfer. Here, it's completely Torah even on its own, and the Gemara remained with a with a kasha. This is a kasha, the contradiction between the two brises of Rebbe Lazar. Yeah. Finally, we learned that the Gemara asks, Rebbe Huna asked his son to ask Rav Papa, how can Shmuel believe that the liquid in the butchering section of the Beis Hamikdash doesn't transfer tumah, right? It doesn't transfer tumah to karbonis. So if a carbon touches a liquid that's tameh, it will not become tameh. How can he believe that? How can he say that? The problem is a pasuk. And we learned the pasuk together in Parshas Tzav, habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh lo ye'achel. A carbon that touches anything that's tameh cannot be eaten. Anything that's tameh. Anything that's tameh. If you hold like Rav, that liquid is not tameh, only rabbinically, I'm good. You could say it didn't touch tameh. But Shmuel holds that liquid becomes tameh, it just can't transfer tumah. How can you say that? You could say it doesn't transfer tumah to mundane food, but it doesn't transfer tumah to holy food. The pasuk says, basar sheyiga b'chol tameh, any tumah. Any tumah. How can you, Shmuel, believe in such a halacha? How can he embrace such an idea in halacha? That mashka should be tameh, but not transfer tumah to karbonis in the Beis Hamikdash. How can you say that? How can you? So you'll say, well, transferring tumah is only rabbinic, and they can be selective. Granted. But transferring tumah to karbonis is not rabbinic, it's biblical, because it says meat that touches any tumah becomes tameh. It can't be eaten, it has to be burnt. So that's not rabbinic. Any, b'chol tameh means anything, that means even liquid. So you cannot say that liquid transferring tumah to karbonis is rabbinic. You can say liquid transferring tumah b'chalal in other areas is rabbinic. That I'm good. You could say that liquids become tameh, they don't transfer tumah. Yitma, not yitame. Fine. Reb Meir also held that, but not karbonis. Karbonis, it says clearly, habasar sheyiga b'chol tameh. Basar that touches any tumah lo ye'achel ba'esh yisarif has to be burnt. Gewaldike shaila. How can you believe a tradition that liquid becomes tameh biblically, but does not transfer tumah to karbonis? That does not make sense, and that's what Shmuel is saying. That's what Rebbe Lazar was saying in the name of Yosef ben Yezer, that the meat in the Beis Hamikdash, karbonis, Beis Hamikdash, will not contract tumah from liquids that are tameh. Rav makes sense. Shmuel doesn't. Why didn't the Gemara ask this question on Reb Meir? We learned earlier a whole sugya that Reb Meir held. What was the testimony of Reb Chanina? You remember Reb Yirmiyah said, what was the testimony of Reb Chanina? That the basar touched liquid, which touched a keli, right? Which touched a sheretz, you remember? And Reb Meir holds that the mashke was tameh, but mashke doesn't transfer tumah to the carbon, so it was only rabbinic. Reb Yossi holds it does transfer. Why didn't they question, how could Reb Meir say that? How could Reb Meir say that? How can Reb Meir say that? Reb Meir already said that transferring is only rabbinic, and he was talking about karbonis according to the last equation. So why didn't Reb Huna tell his son to ask this question on Reb Meir? Why is it a question only on Shmuel interpreting Rebbe Lazar in the name of Yosef ben Yezer Shtreida? The answer is, when Reb Meir said that liquid doesn't transfer tumah min haTorah, it could be what he meant is chulin. It doesn't transfer tumah to mundane food, but the karbonis it would transfer. Rabbi Yirmiyah explained that Reb Meir believed that the interpretation of Reb Chanina in the Mishnah was that it doesn't transfer tumah even to karbonis. That's true, but that's the one opinion of Rabbi Yirmiyah. There were other ways of explaining Reb Meir in the whole sugya. You remember, Rish Lakish believed that Reb Meir was speaking about a case where it was of Vlad HaTumah Midayraisa. Let's say a Tvul Yoim touched the carbon. So therefore the question of Reb Huna and Reb Meir would be a very selective question according to the interpretation of Reb Yirmiyah. But there's other ways of explaining Reb Meir. So therefore it's not a question that's really a clincher. Because Reb Meir could say, you didn't understand me. There's ways of understanding Reb Meir differently. But Shmuel, there's no other way of understanding him. He's saying in the Beis HaMikdash, the karbonos don't become tamei from touching liquid. This is a game changer and contradicts the pasuk. So first Reb Shisha said, well, you have the same idea in Revi. Every carbon that's a Revi doesn't transfer Tumah. But it doesn't make sense. If it touches a Chamishi, the Chamishi should become Tameh. Because Basar Asher Yiga B'chol Tameh. Why is there a Revi in Karbonis? Why does the Tumah get stopped? Everyone holds that it's possible, it's not Tameh. However you're going to explain that, you'll explain this. But Rabashi refuted this and said, come on, a Revi is never called Tameh in Chumash. There's never in Chumash where you have a Revi that's Tameh. The only reason we say a Revi is Tameh because we learn it with a Kal V'Chaim, the Gemara will explain later. But, Mashke is called Tameh. So when the Pasuk says Karbanas that touch Tameh, it doesn't have to include a Revi, but it has to include Mashke because they're Tameh. And therefore, it does not make sense to say that Mashke does not transfer Tumah to Karbanas. Biblically, that cannot be. And therefore, the Gemara is left with a kasha, a strong question on the opinion of Shmuel, that biblically, Mashke becomes Tameh and it does not transfer Tumah to Karbanos biblically. If you want to say it doesn't transfer to Chulin, I'm fine. I have no problem with that. You want to say only rabbinically it transfers to Chulin, fine. But to say that it doesn't transfer to Karbanos biblically, only rabbinically, and therefore in the Beis HaMikdash, they chose and said it doesn't transfer, that wouldn't make sense based on this pasuk. The Gemara is left with a kasha. Okay, good. We'll soon see that the Sfas Emes has a gewaldige pshat. How perhaps this is a very strong question. This is not a small question. Sfas Emes is going to have a gewaldige interpretation. How perhaps you can answer this question, but we'll soon see. If you say that, but Shmuel holds, says v'chol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli yitma. Any liquid that's drunk in any vessel becomes tameh. So the Torah calls liquid that touched tumah, touched a keli that was tameh, it calls it tameh, yitma, right? Clearly. A revi is never has the word tameh in the whole chumash. The reason we passel a revi is from a kal v'chaimer, from a logical equation. But mashka is called tameh. So if you hold, like Rav, that mashka is not even makabel tumah at all, and this pasuk has to be completely reinterpreted, as we'll see in a moment, good. But if you hold like Shmuel, that yitma means it becomes tameh, and now you have a pasuk in Parshas Tzav, habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh lo ye'achel. Karbonis, meat that touches any product that's tameh should not be eaten. B'chol tameh means anything that's tameh. How can you come and say that biblically, if a liquid is tameh, it doesn't transfer that tumah to carbon meat when it says v'habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh? Who gave you the authority to make such a powerful, exclusive statement and say b'chol tameh is almost b'chol tameh? Because if meat touches mashka, no, it's tahor biblically. Where can you say come up with such a thing? You can't. You want to say that mashke doesn't transfer tumah to chulin? I'm good. You have no biblical source that mashke transfers tumah to chulin unless you read yitameh. You don't want to read yitameh, you want to read yitma. But karbonos, you have a clear pasuk that karbonos that touch anything that's tameh, they become tameh. The meat becomes tameh. You have to burn it, and mashke is tameh. So the Gemara says kasha. I revi b'kodesh also doesn't transfer tumah, but that's not called tameh. Revi is not called tameh. Touching mashke is called tameh in Torah. Verstehst? You understand?
How do you have to read it Yitame to transfer Yitma definition?
Because Yitma means you become tameh. Yitame means you give to others.
The definition of Tame means you could transfer because otherwise it's possible. So why?
No. In other words, it's possible in our vocabulary. We distinguish possible and tameh simply for conversation.
Like a revi is always possible.
Because a revi doesn't have a source. It doesn't say in Chumash that a revi is tameh. But if we would say a revi is tameh, the Gemara says, how could it not transfer to other karbonos? When the Torah says that a meat of carbon that touches anything that's tameh, you have to burn. You're right. If we would say that a revi is tameh, you also wouldn't be able to say it. This is Rabashi's question. Don't compare it to a revi. It's a completely different genre. It's a completely different creature. Not yet. Toshma, come in here. What do we want? We're going to try to refute the proposition of Rav. What's the proposition of Rav? That liquid is not mekabel tumah min haTorah. Biblically, liquid is not makabel tumah. Toshma, a big question on Rav. The pasuk says, and you all know the pasuk now. Pasuk lamed daled in Perik Yud Aleph of Shmini, v'chol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli yitma. Any liquid that could be drunk in any vessel becomes tamei. How in the world can there be an opinion that liquid is not tamei min atayra? I can understand liquid not transferring tamei min atayra, but liquid not being tamei min atayra, it says, mikala oichel asher yeyachel, asher yaveh alav mayim yitma, v'chol mashka asher yishasa b'chol kli yitma. Answers the Gemara, ma yitma, what does yitma mean? Hichshir. Yitma means that it makes the food susceptible to be mekabel tumah. In other words, Rav has a different interpretation of the pasuk. This is what he believes Yosef ben Yezer Shtreida means, which is a fascinating chiddush, how to take the same pasuk and literally give a completely different interpretation. Let's see the two interpretations. Take a look at the pasuk. Interpretation number one is interpretation, and tell me which one you would choose. If I gave you a choice, which one you would choose. Let's do one and let's do two. Interpretation number one is, Pasuk Lamed Gimel says, any earthenware potter, any earthenware vessel, that a sheretz falls into it, anything in the vessel is tameh. Okay, now Lamed Gimel. From any food that's eaten, that water makes it wet, it becomes tameh if it falls into the clay cheres that became tameh. Or any liquid that can be drunk in any vessel becomes tameh. How do you understand this pasuk? One way of understanding it is any food that falls into a tameh vessel or any liquid that falls into a tameh vessel, they become tameh. The food becomes tameh, the liquid becomes tameh. Comes the Gemarah says, and Rav says, no, you misunderstood the pasuk. The pasuk means this. Any food that can be eaten, and water went on that food and made it wet, or any other liquid came in contact with that food and made it wet, then the food is tameh. Get it? Not liquid, not food or liquid in the keli become tameh. No, liquid does not become tameh. Any food in the keli that got wet with water, or got wet with any other beverage that's drunk in every vessel, that food becomes tameh. Which means, no, not liquids. Food, yes, liquid, not. Any mashke, besides water, anything we call mashke besides water that's drunk in any vessel that falls on the oichel, it makes the oichel susceptible to tumah. Not fruit juice, it has to be mashke. Yeah, but because you call fruit juice a mashke. You can also drink potato. You could also grind up potato. Everything in the world can be a juice. We have to have the definition of a mashke in Torah. So there's 7 types of liquids. So we know not only water, but any liquid also makes the food susceptible to tumah. That's the chiddush of Rav. Doiraisa. But liquid itself, you have no source for tumah in Torah. Liquid can't become tameh. Wow. Ein lemashkin tumah min Torah. Liquid can't become tameh. Ah? Lamed Vav? Lamed Vav says that a wellspring is tahor. You want to prove from Lamed Vav the opposite. Interesting question. Wait a few moments, please. The Gemara is going to address Pasuk Lamed Vav. We're now holding Pasuk Lamed Dalet. Let's not jump ahead of ourselves. You understand the 2 ways of learning the pasuk? Again, the first way is any food that's eaten, that water falls on it, becomes tameh, and any drink that is drunk in any vessel becomes tameh. One interpretation. In other words, liquid becomes tameh. Interpretation number 2, any food that's eaten, that water falls on it becomes tameh, but not only water. Water or any other drink that's drunk in any vessel that falls on the food becomes tameh. But liquid never becomes tameh. Ah? Well, you want to say not only water. Water and any other mashke. Oil, milk, honey, wine, dew, blood.
The first statement I only learned.
It says mayim. It says mayim. Yeah. Now, if you were reading this pasuk objectively, which choice, which interpretation would you choose and why?
The other way, it's saying twice.
How would have you written it according to the second interpretation? What's the problem with the second interpretation?
Right, that's it. Not Mayim.
You see, the two yitmas become the problem. You see? That first yitma interrupts the sentence. If I wanted to write it in the second interpretation, I had a simpler way of writing it and also shorter. Any food that falls on it that becomes wet with water, or any other drink, it becomes tameh. It's not what he says. He says, any food that falls on it, that water, any food that's eaten in the keli, that water falls on it, is tameh. The food is tameh. And any drink that's drunk in every vessel becomes tameh. So you're saying that that's also going on the food. So why did it say yitma twice? If you say like the first interpretation, of course you need two yitmas, two separate things. The food becomes tameh, and the water and the liquid becomes tameh. Very nice. Of course it says yitma twice. It's two separate verses. It's two separate sentences. It's two separate clauses. It's two separate halachas. But according to the second interpretation, right, it's completely redundant because it's one tumah. It's all about food. So food. Let's say I'm saying it in English, right? Would I say a sentence like this? How would somebody present? If I want to say halacha, I could say it in two ways. Let me say it the right way. Let me say it the wrong way. The right way is any food that gets wet through water or any other liquid, it can become tameh. I think that was a fair sentence. Here is a awkward sentence. Any food that gets wet through water can become tameh, and any other liquid can become tameh. Whoa. That was a very awkward way of saying it, because and any other liquid that falls on the food, it makes the food become tameh. Why are you repeating the yitma, which only gives room for distortion? It sounds like the yitma is on the food. That's the problem. So the interpretation is a very interesting interpretation, but the grammar of the pasuk seems to indicate the opposite. So the Gemarah says, "Ma yitma." Rav says, "What is yitma?" Hichshir. Doesn't mean the food is the liquid is tameh. Means the liquid makes the food kosher, susceptible. Hichshir means susceptible to tumah. Frag the Gemarah, hichshir mereisha dekra shamet lei. That you learned from the beginning of the pasuk. Mikala eichel asher yeachel asher yavei alav mayim yitma. Now you want to say, well, you have to tell me also other liquids, not only water. Granted, but you don't need a second yitma. Mikala eichel asher yeachel, right? With mayim and any other liquid is one yitma. The yitma is turning me off. So the Gemarah says, no. Chad bitlushin v'chad b'mechobarin. This is very interesting. One yitma teaches me about water that's detached. And one teaches me about water that is connected. Meaning, when it comes to blood or other types of beverages, there's no difference between the two. But water, there is a difference, because the natural state of water, in terms of our connection to natural water, is you have a cistern or you have a well, right, a mayan or a bird that fills up with water. Either it flows with water or it fills up with water from rain, etc. So it's a natural source of water, and this is called mechubarin. The water is connected. What do we mean connected? It's connected to the earth. It's a natural place. Then I take my cup or my barrel or my jug, right, and I fill it up with water. That's called tlushin. The water is now detached from its natural habitat, which is the way it falls from the heavens, or a well, which is always connected to the earth and the ground. Rain can't be suspended. Rain has a cistern where it falls into, and that's where it's stored. Or if it's a well water, it's a wellspring, so then it's naturally connected to the earth. Which mayim would be the one that would make food susceptible to be mekabel tumah? You might differentiate and say, there's a difference between the two. And the Gemara is going to explain, Utzrichi, you need both. If you tell me that detached water makes food susceptible, in other words, when I take a cup of water and I fill it up from my well or my cistern, right? And then I pour it on my grapes, or I put my grapes into it, then it's mekabel tumah. Why? Mishum da'achshavinu. Because you gave special distinction, prominence to that water. You showed that you want that water. You chose that water. You took that water and you detached it and you put it into a vessel. And the whole idea of hechsher is always something that's done with consent, with will. This is water that you demonstrate keen interest in this water. Aval mechubarin emaloi. You would say that they don't make the food susceptible to Gamal Tumah because you never gave this water special distinction and prominence. It remained in its natural habitat. Vitana mechubarin. If we don't only have a pasuk that connected water to the earth, is machsha, I would say, you know why? Because that's their natural place. Mishum de Chaimu b'dichtayu chashivi. Because they are in their place. That's where their prominence is. This is their place, and therefore they could make food susceptible to be mekabel tumah. In other words, when Torah says water makes it susceptible, what does water mean? Water in its natural habitat. Where is water in its natural habitat? A wellspring, which is connected to the ground, obviously, or a cistern, at least, which absorbs the rainwater that comes down. That is its natural habitat. And it's also the prominence of water when in its natural space. As the Gemarah says, it's kaimu b'duchtayu, v'chashivi, it's chashiv. Aval tlushin, if it's detached, I would say it loses some of that quality of the naturalness of water. Maloi, perhaps it doesn't make the food susceptible to be mekabel tumah. So tzrichi, therefore, you need both. So Rav would say, you know why it says yitma twice? Yitma twice is because the second yitma, what's the language? Kol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli. It's the liquid in a vessel. In other words, it's already tlushin, it's detached. That makes the food tameh. The first yitma is mayim, regular mayim. What's regular mayim? Regular mayim is without any accessory, mayim in its natural place. What do I need both for? Because if it would be one, I would say yitma in this case, but not yitma in this case. There's a mila in tlushin that you give a distinction. There's a mila in mechubarin because it's its natural place. That's why Rav says you have two special yitmas, that both types of liquids, whether the mayim is detached or attached, it makes the food susceptible to tumah. V'chol mashka, other liquids also. But other liquids, it's not a chiddush tlushin and mechubarin because they don't have a difference. What's blood that's connected and disconnected? What's oil that's connected and disconnected? Honey, what? It's in a beehive. It sits in the beehive. It's already not connected to the ground. But water, you have a big difference between well water, right, and water that's in a vessel. It's a different type of water. Even scientifically, it's a different type of water. The water goes through a transfer. In other words, you need the pasuk to tell you that other liquids could make oichel become tameh. If it would just say mayim, you wouldn't know that every mashka could make it tameh. So that's why it has a mikol oichel asher yachel asher yavei alav mayim v'chol mashka asher yishasa b'chol kli. That any mayim and any mashka that's yishasa b'chol kli, so you know that all the mashkins could be machshir food to be mekabel tumah. The question is, why do you have to say a second yitma? The second yitma would teach me that mashkin themselves are mekabel tumah. So that's what the Gemarah says, that in addition to the fact that the Torah has to add all liquids to teach me that all liquids could make food susceptible to tumah, that's true. The Torah has to teach me something else about water. The end of the pasuk is not only teaching me that other liquids work, it also teaches me a chiddush in water. If it would just say v'chol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli without a yitma, you know what I would say? All liquids do it in a vessel. I have oil, I have milk, I have honey. My cherry fell into the honey I wanted honey cherries, cherry honey, or milky cherries, or oily cherries, good. But if it falls into a cup of water, no. It says kol mayim, natural water, natural habitat, water that's connected to the ground, water that has that prominence. The wellspring is the real water. The water that's detached, half-baked water. It's already not water. That doesn't become tameh. It says kol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli. Every other liquid of the 6 liquids in a keli, but not mayim. Mayim that you said in the beginning of the pasuk is natural mayim, real mayim, authentic mayim. That's why the Torah comes and says yitma. What's the yitma? The yitma is the food gets tameh even through water that's b'chol kli. water that's similar to any liquid that's bechol kli, because by liquids there's no difference, keli or not. Remember, other liquids besides water, there's no detached or attached. They're always detached. There's no difference. It's not like water. So that's the chiddush, just like by other liquids. It's talking about detached liquids because it says bechol kli. So water also, they become something that make the food susceptible to be makabel tumah, even if they are detached. If it would only say the first yitma, what would we say? That only connected water could make food susceptible to be makabel tumah. If it would only say the second yitma, what would I say? What if it would only say the second yitma, not the first yitma? I would say the exact opposite. Only water that's detached could make the oichel tumah. Why? Because that water you conferred special, distinctive significance on. You made it chashav. You plucked it out of its natural habitat. You want this water. It's not part of the natural water. You chose this water. So you would think that since you gave chashivas to this water, when you filled it up with a vessel, you went and you took out the water, that's the water that can make the oichel mukshad makabel tumah. So you need both yitmas to tell me both. One yitma would not work for the other. So if it would say the first yitma, I would think mayim is only mechubar, and that's the mayim that could be machshir. If it would say only the second yitma, I would say, oh, mayim or mashke in a keli yitma. But mayim not in a keli? Sorry, not sorry, great, it's not machshir makabel tumah. That's why you have both yitmas. And therefore, Rav can explain this pasuk very well, and he has no problem with the two yitmas. He has no problem with the two yitma. That means if a cherry falls into my wellspring, and then I take out the cherry, and it's wet, does this cherry makabel tumah? Yes. Not only if it fell into a keli that had water in it, even if it fell into the natural cistern that had rainwater inside. I take out the cherry, and it's makabel tumah. You typhus? You typhus? Yuval of Mayim. Yovel of Mayim. Yeah, could be rain. Yeah. But rain, if rain is falling on it, yeah. Says the Gemara, let's just do this question because you asked it. Toshma, I have another question. Ach Mayim ubor Mikveh Mayim yitar. Pasuk lamed vav. A wellspring and a cistern of water will be tar. What does that mean? It means water in a well is not makabel tumah. A mikveh is not makabel tumah. But water that's detached from a well, if I take a cup and I fill it up with water, that water is makabel tumah. How in the world can Rav believe that biblically liquid is not makabel tumah? And it only makes eichel tameh when we have a clear pasuk that a well water is tahar, but any other water is not tahar. Where do you have a stronger pasuk? Mayon or bar mikveh mayim yiyatar. And if it's not a bar, if it's a water in a cup, it's not tahir water. In other words, it becomes tameh. So how in the world, even if the pasuk yitma doesn't teach me that liquid becomes tameh, but this pasuk teaches me, I infer from this pasuk that if it's not well water or not natural cistern water, what we call a mikveh today, or always a cistern filled with rainwater, natural water, or a wellspring, is tameh. Could become tameh. Gewaldige kasha. The Gemara says, maybe you're interpreting the pasuk wrong. My yiyatar. What does yiyatar? That's not referring to the water. Mitumasai. It's referring to a person who's tameh and he goes into a well or a cistern of rainwater. He becomes tar. This pasuk is not talking about the water. We understood the pasuk saying, well, water is pure. And what about water in a cup that came from a well? Can become tameh. That's a proof that liquid biblically can become tameh. He says, no, you misunderstood the pasuk. We're not talking the water versus water. We're not talking about it. Water doesn't become tameh ever. Biblically, liquid does not become tameh. That's Rav Shita in Rebbe Lazar and Yosef ben Yezer. What the pasuk is saying is when you have a well or a mikveh, yiyatah, a person who dips into a spring or into a cistern, a pit with natural rainwater, he or she becomes pure. That's it. V'negei b'nivlasim yitma means that if I'm in the well or in the mikveh and I'm touching a sheretz, I'm holding on to a dead sheretz, I'm tameh. Don't think, if I become tummy and I go into water, I become tired. So certainly if I'm in the water, I won't become tummy. He says, no, you're going to become tummy. Don't think once you're in a mikveh, you could still be in contact with tummy. You have to detach yourself from tummy. It's not enough jumping into the mikveh, right? Jumping into the mikveh won't cleanse you if you're still holding on to tumah. It's not going to work. It's called toivel v'sheretz biyadeh, as we said. But it's not talking about liquid when it's in a well or outside of a well. Really, I hold that liquid even outside of a well is always pure. It never becomes tameh. Here we're talking about yiyah, not the water. Yiyah mitum asoi, the person who was tameh. Earlier, he becomes tired by going into such a well. If he doesn't go into such a well, if he goes in, let's say, to a keli that has mayim, called mayim she'uvin, water that was drawn from a well, but now it's not a well, it's not a natural source of water, that water will not make him tahar. That will not be mikveh water. So we're not talking about the mayim itself. We're talking about the person, and therefore Rav can maintain his position that Yosef ben Yezer Shreder really believed that biblically liquid never ever becomes tameh. No matter what happens, water, wine, milk, honey, dew, etc., will never be susceptible to tumah on a biblical level, and there's no contradiction from any pasuk. Liquid can make food become tameh, but liquid itself is not a source of tumah. So Rav's position is maintained. Now, just to conclude, so I'll tell you the vort of the Svas Emes, who says something very fascinating, that very interestingly, a very interesting insight. Okay? And now, don't tune out. But Shmuel, who holds that liquid does become tameh, so the way he learned Yitma, how did he learn Yitma? He learned Yitma is on the liquid itself, right? So how does he know that water that's attached and detached can make the food susceptible to Makabel Tumah? Rav said we need two Yitmas, one for this type of water and one for this type of water, because one without the other would not be sufficient, because each one has a logic to say only this one. What about Shmuel? Shmuel has the second Yitma. He uses it for the liquid itself because he holds that liquid becomes tameh. So how does he know that water, even if it's detached, is machshir food to be mekabel tumah? So he says, it's a little bit hard to understand. So one way of learning it is, this is what the Maharam Chalva says, one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Moshe Chalva, he says that you have to say, according to Shmuel, that the one Yitma, the first Yitma, teaches both, because he would read the pasuk, Mikala oichel asher ya'achel, asher yavay alav mayim, Yitma v'chol mashka asher yishasa b'chol kli. Meaning that he's going to say that all the food that's eaten that becomes wet, and all the mashka that you could drink in any keli, that includes both mayims. That includes both mayims. It includes the mayim that's tlushim mechabar. But it's a little difficult. Svas Emes says, this pasuk that we just learned, Achmayun ubar mikveh mayim yiyeh tahir. We explained yiyeh tahir is what? The person. But according to Shmuel, you could say that the pasuk has two interpretations. Yiyeh tahir, the person, and yiyeh tahir is what? Is the mashka. What says it's the mashka? That the mashka that's attached is yitar. So what is he talking about? So Shmuel says that perhaps the source for the tumah of detached water becomes from this pasuk, not from Yitma. In other words, maybe Shmuel holds just like Rav, that the second Yitma teaches you that food becomes susceptible to tumah from water that's detached. How do you know that water itself becomes tameh? Not from that pasuk, maybe from this pasuk. Ach mayim ubor mikveh mayim. Only mayim in a mikveh doesn't become tameh, which is true. But mayim that's detached does become tamei. This would be a whole new source. That means the first pasuk, Rav and Shmuel would agree. That's a gewaldige chiddush. If that would be true, then the big question that Reb Huna sent his son to ask Rav Papa, how Shmuel could say that basar of karbonas doesn't get tamei from mashke, and Reb Shisha said because it's revi b'kodesh. And the Ashi said Revi is not metame because it's not called Tameh, but Mashka is called Tameh versus Revi. If this is the case, we have an answer to that question. You know why? Because detached liquid is never called Tameh in Chumash. The Torah never called detached liquid Tameh. The Torah Yitma means that it makes the food susceptible to Tumah. But the liquid itself, we don't learn from there. Where do we learn it from? The pasuk that a mayon is tahor, and if it's detached from the mayon, automatically becomes tamei. But we don't have the word of tamei about this water. If we don't have the word of tamei, so when it says that the karbonis meat that touch tamei you can't eat, perhaps it doesn't include mashke, because mashke is not called tamei anywhere in Chumash. It's not called tamei. We infer the tumah from this pasuk, just like we infer the vi b'kodesh from a kal v'chaimer, but it doesn't have the name tamei. So Aibazai, he's right to say that liquid doesn't transfer tumah, Shmuel, biblically, even for karbonis, because it says habasa sheiga b'chol tamei, and liquid is not called tamei. It only transfers tumah rabbinically, and in the Beis Hamikdash they said no. So that might be an answer to this great question that the Gemara ended up with kasha. If you learn that ach mayun abar mikveh mayim yitar is not just an insight in Rav, but it redefines Shmuel also. That Shmuel learns the whole source of liquid becoming tummy from this pasuk. And the first pasuk, Yitma, he agrees to Rav, that it's going on the two types of water that's attached and water that's detached, and also other liquids can also make it tamei, oichel tamei. Okay. Try to chazah the Gemara. According to Rav, the way he interprets Yosef ben Yezer, water is nothing. Water never becomes tamei min haTorah. Oh, midrabanan, oh yeah, it's a bad one. Midrabanan, it's the worst tumah. It's not the worst, it's just always a rishon. It's always a rishon. That's a good question. How? Midairaisa nothing, and midrabanan it's always bumped up to rishon. That's a good question. Why would they bump it up so strong, you're saying? It's very, very deep, very deep. Min haTorah, it's nothing. And midrabanan, any mashke becomes a rishon. Even if it touches a sheni, it's bumped up to a rishon. It's like
so holy that even in the Torah.
So what am I afraid of? What are you protecting me from?
Protection. Why is it saying it's protection?
What protection? What are you trying to protect?
What are you trying to protect when there's nothing here? When there's mamish nothing here, what are you trying to protect?
You're making me upset.
You're saying if there's a psatuma, they make a fence around it, a buffer zone. It's mamish nothing. It's pure as pure gets. And they say that even if it touches your hands, which are a sheni, it goes to a rishon. And therefore it can always be metama food and kalim, right? It metama kalim, and if the keli touches another liquid, the liquid becomes a rishon again.
Right.
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It's endless, because if it would be a shlishi, it would stop. If it would be a sheni, it would stop. But now it never stops, because it always goes to the top and it can transfer. It mamish never stops. It's endless. So you're feeling what's happening here? No, what's the Havana?
I would have said a reason why kept them bringing it back to reach. I don't remember.
Well, the reason in halacha why they made mashkin so severe was, we explained, right?
You're right, you explained it, that the guy gets down in the morning.
Because mashka is so...
The pancakes.
The pancakes. In other words, that the rabbis made tuman mashka. They made tuman mashka.
The word would be too relaxed. Right? The word would be...
That'd be the worst thing.
For Jews to be relaxed. But you're saying, why would they even make a tuman mashka l'chatchila? Once they made a tuman mashka, you could say, they made it a rishon, because it's so easy for mashka to become tummy because it doesn't have to get wet. Oichel has to get wet, but mashka doesn't have to get wet to become tummy. It can always become tummy. So it's so easy, and it's so frequent, and it's so common, so they made it a very severe tumah. That we can understand. But if you hold that tumas mashka, huh? So garnished, why are they even creating a tumah? So this means that there's something that on a biblical level it's not shaykh to be mekabel tumah, and on a rabbinic level, not only is it shaykh to be mekabel tumah, it always remains the highest level of tumah. That means it's something that on one level is so pure, and on another level, if it can get tameh, it becomes the highest level of tumah.
Oh, you see the sherets, like Mir says, on the other side of everything's tarek. You find 50, 150 reasons of how sherets is
They want to stay away from Mayim, because Mayim seems to be so powerful. It's machshir.
It's machshir the oichel.
Right, so they wanted to stay away from it almost.
It's machshir the oichel.
Right.
It's machshir.
So it seems like it's very powerful.
Very powerful.
We're talking about pure water is machshir.
It's machshir the oichel.
Yeah, it's Mayim. Yeah. What?
So we have a very profound idea here. There's a sikha of the Rebbe, Lekut Sichas Chelik Chavzayim Parshas Shmini. There's a sikha by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he says over there that al pi nister, al pi pnimius, everything in Tumah exists on many levels, of course. Especially Tumah and Tara is a spiritual idea. Mashke, he said, represents something that spreads out. It's not, we spoke about this, it doesn't remain isolated. It's not like a piece of food that's a solid, a liquid. The Gemarah says, "Ma mayim yordim emakam gavoya lemakam namuch." It spreads, and it spreads out to the lowest place possible. If there's a lower surface, the lowest surface it will go to. That's generally the quality of liquid. It spreads, right? In a person, there's a person who's a food type of person and a liquid type of person. Food type of person is a person who's introverted. You remain in your own space. A liquid type of person is somebody who spreads. What I have, I bring forth, I share, I give to others. That's the quality of mashke, hispashtus, expansiveness. You don't keep it by yourself. The water, you put it down, it's not going to stay here. I want to be, right away, I'm going to bring it. Ufaratzto yama v'kaidma tzafoyna v'negba. I'm going to, yafutzu my noisecha chutza, right? The wellspring spread out, outwards. Unless there's a wall that contains it, or a cup, there's a dam on its own, its nature is further and further and further to the lowest possible place. If there's a lower place, the water is going to trickle down there. It's not going to say, that's too far from me. I'm going to go there until I dry up. I'm going to go there. Even in a person's body, water causes the minerals and the nutrients in the food to dissolve and travel throughout the whole body. That's what the Gemarah says. Right? It's very important to drink after you eat. The Rambam says in Pirush HaMishnayos that mayim is not called a food, not called davar hamezin. It travels. It causes the food to travel. Also, mayim is an adhesive. It connects things that are separate. Right? The moist connects things. In other words, it's a connector. It takes things that are separate and brings them together. Bricks, yeah. Generally, moist connects things. It's same idea. It takes things that are separate, in other words, it reaches and it connects things that don't belong to each other, just like it travels to every possible place. It's a connector. So here's the key, that min ha-Torah, mashke is not shaykh, according to this opinion, mashke is not shaykh to tumah. Why is it not shaykh to tumah? Because somebody, right, who gives and spreads their Yiddishkeit and spreads their goodness, this is the ultimate, this is the whole tachlis, this is the whole kavanah. This is the whole purpose of everything. So how could in this there's no tumah? On this there's no tumah. On its own, in its own pristine state, this is the ultimate of purity. It's not even shachtim mekabel tumah. According to this view, min ha-Torah, no, on the contrary, nothing. Whether it's attached or detached, it's never mekabel tumah. Such a type of person, such a type of quality is not mekabel tumah. But, like in everything, tumah is always based on potential. Tumah is always based on tremendous potential. Whenever there's great spiritual potential, if it's misused or misconstrued or distorted, it attracts a greater tumah than anything else. That's why the greatest tumah is a Jew who's a mace. Wouldn't you think a behemoth that's a mace should be a bigger tumah? No. Behemoth is a mace, you go to the mikveh, you're done. A Jew that's a mace, because the potential, the neshama is so powerful, when the neshama leaves the body, it creates a much greater tumah, much deeper tumah. Because there's so much more potential there, there's so much more light there. So the rabbis understood that mashka, because it's so powerful, you spread, and you're out there, and you connect to people, if there's a distortion there, if there's an ego there, if there's vanity there, if tumah chapsa charain there, it's much more intense. Because if I'm in like my own little thing, fine, I do my own thing, so there's tumah, you're eichel, you're tameh. But if mashke becomes tumah, so in HaTorah there's no tumah. But the rabbis who were sensitive to the different distortions that are possible inside human nature and the Yetzer Hara and ego, right? Once I'm out there, my message is spread out and I'm so much connected and I have so much influence, right? So when you contaminate that level, that type of influence, it trickles down in a very powerful way to so many things. It's much more effective. So therefore the tumah becomes much more profound, much more intense. You understand? Because of the gewaldige purity of mashka, when it becomes impure, it's much more catastrophic. It's much more detrimental. You know the Maisa, with the horse, the fast horse, the slow horse.
No, I don't know.
There was once a chassid, a Talmud of the Balatanya, and he had a son who was brilliant and talented and very, very wise and like a special Bal Kishrin, like a unique person. Just very capable and just full of brilliant potential. And as a kid, he brought him to the Balatanya once. And he came in. And the father, said, this child knows this and knows this and knows this and knows a brilliant kid. He knows Tanakh, Mishnayos, Gemarah, whatever. And so there's a whole story, the beginning of the story, but it's not for now. It's a whole long Maisa or the conversation. He asked him Kashas. But then he asked him if he knows the difference between a slow horse and a fast horse. So he said, of course he knows. A slow horse, if you want to get to your destination, could take you a week. And a fast horse, what takes a slow horse a week, could take you a day. That's the difference. You get much, much faster to your destination. The Balatanya says, but what happens if the horse is going in the wrong direction? What's the difference between a slow horse and a fast horse? So he said, a slow horse, you're going to get lost slowly. It'll take you time, and in the meantime, you may realize you made a mistake. A fast horse, he's so fast, if he goes in the wrong direction, he can take you to very dangerous places very, very fast. And the father was very uncomfortable, like, what is the little kid? So the boy listened. And then the Alter Rebbe said, but what happens when the slow horse and the fast horse discover that they're lost? And they have to come back. I said, remember that the fast horse can also come back much faster. L'Poyel, this boy went through a lot of struggles. He was a fast horse, and he went very, very far, very fast. But L'Poyel, he returned. This is what the Balatanya told him when he was a child. So that's the concept. Mashke is a fast horse. Literally, it's moist travel. It makes things travel. We even know it with germs, right? And bacterias. The wetness, the moist, is what causes it to spread so fast. When there's moist, it spreads. It's a fast horse, a very fast horse. A fast horse is incredible. It takes you to the highest and deepest and most amazing places. But that's all if you're going straight. If you make one little turn, you just start, it doesn't mean you're going wrong. It's just a little bit, you're off on your angle. So in the beginning, it's not a big difference. It's just a few. If you're going slow, so then you drift away from your destination slowly. But if you're off a little bit on an angle, not the 180 degrees, a few degrees, just 1 degree off. It's like this. What's the difference? But you're going fast. So before you know it, You're an oimek tachas b'sfakrochen. So you're a rishon l'tumah, you're not a sheni l'tumah. You become a big source of tumah. The herst, min atayr, it's not makabel tumah at all. It's haba hatalya. That's the deeper explanation al pi chassidus.
Remember the halacha you do this way.
Huh?
I'm saying when you cancel.
Always, when you make it relevant, it's clear. The whole halacha moves on. It's a pleasure having you, and an honor having you.
Amazing. Every story.
You too. Just because you come every day, it's still a pleasure to have you. I know just because I come every day, it's still a pleasure to have me, right?
Have this Shul.
You're Taifas Abaran.
It's amazing how the Rebbe always turned every story into chizuk.
Always. That was
the
his.
story was meant for it.
Yeah.
Like Valentine. He did. I don't think he meant it for.
That was his thing.
You should always have this.
Kedusha, you have to spread. Your futsu, my nesecha chutza.
What you said today about the moon sounds opposite. More light.
It's not a contradiction. We spoke in the morning in the Maimer. The more humility, the more you could spread. The more the levana needs to be mekabel in order to be mashpia. It's not a stira. Fakir, that secures the Tara. That secures the Tara. Because when you're humble, it's not about your ego. The problem of mashka is when it becomes about ego. If I'm mekabel, then it's not less ego. The problem of the mashka is the ego. Everybody have a beautiful day. A lot of atzlacha.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.